Hello there, and a very warm welcome to another edition of Channels Beam. I'm Victor MATHIAS. Now, the world taking a turn to an era where technology affects every aspect of our lives. One key aspect of this phenomenon that has proven to be a major driver, even in a world without technology, is the economy. This edition of the program will examine how Nigeria's digital economy has been operating, how it compares with that of countries that have a proven track record of success or otherwise, lessons to be learned and or discarded going forward. But before we do all of that, let's first run through the social media talked about topics otherwise known as trends in the past week.
For the first time in a long time, the Nigerian budget was passed by the National Assembly to ensure that a January to December budget cycle is implemented. This got some Nigerians excited, while others were more concerned about the implementation. Former presidential candidate Awogbenle Sowore enjoyed his freedom for barely 12 hours when he was rearrested by operatives of the Department of State Services. The court had ordered the secret police to release him after being in detention for over 100 days.
Well, there you go. Those were the trends in the past week. But joining us to look at today's topic, we have with us David Alozie. Thanks for joining us on the program.
Thank you very much, Victor.
Of course, you're welcome. We also have Seun Awogbenle. Thanks as well for joining us on the program today. Fantastic. We also have joining us via Skype from Dallas in Texas. That's the United States. Olusolong Amuson, thanks as well for joining us on the program today.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Of course. And then finally joining us from our Abuja studio via one of a kind and first of its kind also in African broadcasting history, Mohammed Brima, joining us via our virtual reality interface. Thanks for joining us on the program today.
It's a pleasure. Thank you.
Of course. Well, Mohammed, let's just kickstart this conversation with you on how Nigeria's digital economy is doing. It clearly stated that, okay, yes, we've made some significant progress, but it's saying that if we're to move further than where we are, significant investments need to be made. So what is the government doing in that regard?
Well, as you can see, looking at the diagnostic report by the World Bank, a lot of factors were considered. 5 main pillars were looked at: digital infrastructure, digital platforms, digital financial services, digital entrepreneurship, and digital skills training. Basically, one of the key areas that still needs investment, as the report highlighted, was digital infrastructure. Talking about broadband connectivity, especially taking this down to rural areas, and looking at how we can actually have fixed broadband through, fiber optic across the country. This is a huge place where I think an investment, in that regard would look at. Also across, digital skills training, which the government is doing some things about already. You could look at the Empower Tech, where we're training, beneficiaries across the north and southern parts of the country in coding, digital marketing, and other key areas.
All right, great. But let me just come into this. I mean, so data, basically, they say is the new crude. I mean, we've heard this statement, quite often, that data is the new crude. And he's saying that, data is actually going to play a key role in all of this. But what do you think about that?
Well, just like you said, we all know that despite Nigeria's maximum crude capacity, about 2.6% of the global total, Nigeria is still yet to build, or ensure their economy that is actually sustainable, that is self-reliant, and that works for the maximum number of Nigeria's population. So what we are having to do is that at the moment, Nigeria actually has a problem with, with unemployment and, trying to reduce poverty, and that is where digital economy comes in. What the digital economy actually provides is enormous opportunity for Nigeria to begin to look beyond oil. And then it is important to note that by 2025, Norway has actually proposed a ban on fossil fuel-driven cars. As by 2030, India and Germany is also going to be doing the same. Most of the countries of the world are actually moving away, and they are legislating that against the use of fossil fuel-driven cars. So what we have essentially is that the numbers will now have to count based on the digital economy. Yeah. And what do you have when you say digital economy, like you talked about that? We have we have the big data storage, which is one of the numerous opportunities that digital economy actually affords. You have the cloud computing and collection as well, which is another opportunity that digital economy affords. You have the information security as well, which is another important and viable opportunity that digital economy affords. Not to talk of robotics, and animation as well. So there are quite a lot of opportunities that digital economy affords, if only the Nigerian government would actually realize that. I mean, and essentially, I know, perhaps the essay to the president on job creation might disagree. But what I think that the ERGP, while the strategic objective actually understands that Nigeria needs to move away from oil, I think that the implementation has not actually reflected.
That's a discussion for another day. But let me quickly bring in Olusola, who is in Dallas. Olusola, so Seun just pretty much talked about so many opportunities that the digital economy actually provides at the moment. But and they also talked about data, which is where artificial intelligence comes in here. And so let's even begin to look at how AI, with all of the data that will be available, all the opportunities, how will AI drive this economy, first of all?
Thank you so much. You see, McKinsey put together a report after surveying 3,000 firms across 10 sectors. They worked with the United Nations, World Bank, and the World Economic Forum so they can get some form of robust overview of the economies across the world. And what they realized is that artificial intelligence and data science will be responsible for additional $13 trillion added to the global economy output between now and 2030. And in the last few days, I have been focusing a lot on thinking about the decade that is ending and the one that is about to start. The new decade from year 2020 to 2029 represents a lot of opportunity for the world, and particularly for underdogs, countries who are in the developing world, who, even though have a huge population, have not paid enough attention to how this transformation can happen from a digital economic standpoint. So artificial intelligence alone is going to be responsible for over $13 trillion additional value added global economic output. The question is,
Olusola, let me come in. How can Nigeria tap into this, humongous amount you just made mention of?
Absolutely. The first thing is that we are giants in our market. For Africa, we are going to be at least 300 million within the next decade. And that's really huge. It means that for our space, we have a huge market. And if you think about the Nigerian market, you shouldn't just think about our population. You should think about every single African country that sort of like acts subordinate to us, that believes in us, that accepts our value, whether it's in all markets, are becoming exports to all of those countries. Our sugar, our salt, everything we're creating is becoming exports. So I think about the Nigerian market as 1 billion people. And to think of that, if we are not leveraging computer vision in terms of autonomous vehicles and trucks, if we're not leveraging research and R&D in natural language processing so that we don't necessarily need to go and learn Swahili before we can sell to a Kenyan, but we can do everything within our systems to make sure that every single service we have in Yoruba and English today leverages natural language processing, which is a branch of artificial intelligence, to offer the same services with any barrier whatsoever. Virtual assistant, robotic automation. Look, there is so much going on, and how we can take place. First, you know, you heard the government person mention issues around broadband and internet penetration. We cannot, in fact, it's a shame that we're still discussing that in 2019 because we should be talking about last penetration right now.
All right, I'll come back to you, in just a minute. But let me quickly go back to, of course, Mohamed Brahma, who is standing right in front of us using, of course, the virtual reality interface. Brahma, so much has been said, and, you know, of course, the government seems to be getting a bit of a backlash. First of all, talking about how much penetration of the internet, which is one of the structures that the World Bank reports actually talked about. So what are we doing to further penetration? Because I see that we're already celebrating the test of 5G. Meanwhile, 4G is not even yet everywhere, so to speak, now. So what is the government doing, in trying to maybe create policies or programs that will further make internet, penetrate more hinterlands in the country?
So again, we know a couple of, digital giants have visited Nigeria in a couple of years, couple of months and years of recent. Google came to Nigeria proposing to, support with, wireless spots around the country. And we look at the position of the government, or what would I call the will of the government. Demand also drives supply. So when the government itself is saying we are moving, to a more digital, economic-driven, government, with the president clearly, stating at the summit, mandating MDAs to migrate, transition into, digital economy, mandating that digital training should start taking places, through these MDAs and government institutions, basically saying that redesignating the Ministry of Communications to Ministry of Communications and Digital Economy. I think the body language is clear, and these sort of demands will keep on driving, the supply. I mean, we have to acknowledge that, globally, digital economy is worth about 2016, I think, was worth about 11.5, trillion US dollars, which is about 15.5% of overall, GDP. This is going to grow to about 25% of the overall GDP in the next less than a decade. So there is focus on this. And Nigeria structurally, and also in terms of our population, is very strong, based on looking at our e-commerce, for instance. Our e-commerce, by the United Nations Conference of Trade and Development, rated Nigeria as the highest in its 2018 report in terms of business to client, business to customer trading. About $12 billion revenue was generated in 2018, next to I think only Mauritius or so. And then we're now we are projecting that to be about $70 billion, revenue generating platform in 2025. These are the types of things that would drive, the supply and the proper pushing, the drive for internet access and all across the country. The job creation aspect also is there. Again, digital platforms.
Let me hold you there for a bit. David, quite a lot of numbers have been, fired around, but, the question is, taxation is also one key thing that the government has also just been talking about not too long ago. Is the digital space or digital economic space in Nigeria right now, is it taxed?
Well, that's it's a quite complex question, So the digital economy is quite vast, and you can't completely say if the digital economy is taxed. So let me even start from looking at the facet of the digital economy from the World Bank framework, which is very comprehensive. For you to have a digital economy, you need to have a digital governance. You need to have a digital citizen. Then you need to have digital private sector.
Which I think we all have in Nigeria.
Well, it depends. It's relative. So if you're talking about digital government, should be talking about where every citizen, a government can communicate with the citizen through some digital means. So now I go to a government agency, I have to do some manual things, I have to go through some kind of bureaucracy, or I have to face some kind of resistance to get the service for which we are paying taxes for. You know, so for you to even say you want to tax something, there should be a framework that captures, you know, everything, you know, in one place.
So basically, it's at the moment, it's not taxed.
Well, I won't say it's taxed, and I would say, there's a whole lot of work that needs to be done. So it needs to be completely created for you to even start talking about taxing it.
Okay, hold on. We'll just take a quick break, and we'll be back in a moment. Please stay with us. Thank you for staying with us. We still have with us our panelists right here in the studio, as well as on Skype, that's from Dallas, and also right here in front of us from our Abuja studio using the virtual reality interface, of course, Mohammed Brima, all staying with us. So just in moving forward, you know, the question around taxation, what do you think about it?
Oh, well, I think that the Nigerian government cannot actually tax a sector that they are yet to fully invest in and they are yet to maximize or leverage on. What you have is that, I mean, take, for example, in 2017, the digital economy actually contributed about $1.35 trillion to the United States economy, and that's just a little bit above average of the total GDP of the whole of Africa. So what you have is that there's a whole lot of opportunity in the digital economy that the Nigerian government is actually yet to enable more people to come into. All
right, let me again turn to Olushola, who is in Texas. You know, so it seems there's just so much lessons to learn. Olushola, I mean, so earlier on I asked you how Nigeria can tap into, you know, all of the money that you said the digital economy will provide from between now and the, you know, next decade, so to speak now. But in terms of importing, you know, the system, like where you work or where you live, where you are right now, because Seun just said America taxed about $1.75 trillion, you know, from digital economy. How can we replicate that model right here in Nigeria, basically?
So, I mean, I'm just going to chime in the same direction that some of my other friends have started talking. You see, before America could do that, they made huge investments. What we should do right now is remove the barriers, give them some definite tax holiday, allow them to go invest in them, make sure that we are actually committing to their growth by giving them the right infrastructure and right policy environment, then set a definite date where their taxation is going to start. You can't just spring up January 1, 2020 on people who you have not either invested into. So before America could tax that, before they could build the Google, the Microsofts, the Ubers of this world, they created that environment, they invested, and now they're reaping where they're sown, because that's actually how to secure the Nigerian future in terms of digital economy.
All right, Olushola Musa, I have to say thank you for joining us today on the program. You joined us via Skype all the way from Dallas in the United States. Thanks again for sharing your thoughts with us today on the program. All right, so Mohammed, let me just come back to you as we close this conversation. Again, you know, the government, they say the government needs to invest, the government needs to, you know, put in so much in terms of ease of doing business, maybe also research. These are like components that we need right now for the tech ecosystem to even blossom, first of all, before we begin to think of taxation, which the government, of course, is going to get a lot of revenue from that sector because like we have rightly noted here, a lot of companies, you know, you even made mention of companies that came to Nigeria in the past few years. So research, ease of doing business, investments, how soon should we be expecting all of that in the tech ecosystem so that Nigeria can benefit in terms of revenue in that digital economy?
I think it's, thank you very much. I think it's important to already start looking at some of the dividends of the obvious, you know, transition that this administration has started since 2015 into, you know, the digital economy. Starting to look, as you mentioned, even the ease of doing business. A lot of the impacts made in ease of doing business, which, of course, as you know, we moved up 15 places to 131 just this year, was also as a derivative of the specific steps the government has taken in that space. Most importantly, again, like I would mention, is the digital training. I'm really particular about digital skills training, because when you have a digital savvy population, with looking at the population we have of youths in Nigeria, I mean, about half of the population of West Africa, Nigeria as a whole, we can leverage on that. And with a digital savvy population, I am certain that that will drive the digital economy space. The government, as you know, is supporting, digital entrepreneurships through the innovation hubs across the country, incubating digital tech startups, and also even this is also driving the digital financial services, mobile monies. It's the potential is huge, and I think the government has recognized this and has started taking, steps that are evident, in driving this forward.
All right. Well, we can't wait for more steps to coming. Of course, we do appreciate the steps that we have at the moment. But again, I have to say thank you. And of course, we can't wait, like I said earlier on, to see more of those steps being put in place so that at the tail end of everything, Nigeria will benefit very well from this digital economy. But then I'd have to say thank you, Mohammed Brima, SA2, the President on Job Creation, for joining us on the program and sharing your thoughts, of course, right here in Lagos through the virtual reality interface. Thank you once again.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome. Well, does that inspire a little bit of hope? Quickly, but we need to close.
Okay, well, apart from hope, a lot of things need to be put in place. Now, for you to drive a digital economy, there needs to be understanding of the dynamics out there. So what the government needs to do is that they need to leverage what we call reverse mentorship. Because there are a whole lot of fintech companies that came into Nigeria recently, not to a year, and a couple of them. They understand the dynamics of digital economy, and they are leveraging it to build strong business. Some of them use less than 25% of the capital which the banks used to run, and they are making so much impact. For the first time, I will go to some people and say, hey, since I started using this guy's solution application, I've been making a whole lot of business, touching more lives. So, and this whole initiative is driven externally from other people. These people are capturing our data, understanding how we work, understanding our financial flow, which I doubt if the government understands the dynamics. So we should be asking why would some countries, some companies like UAE, be looking at someone in charge of AI for the government? Because if a government runs AI, the issue of saying that the budget is not enough to run the country will not exist, because living the technology, you will be able to accelerate and achieve more, even with less than that.
Hopefully that will happen in the very near future. But I have to say thank you, David Alozie, for joining us on the program as well as show. Awogbenle, thanks as well for joining us and sharing your thoughts on this issue. Hopefully in the next few years we'll celebrate Nigeria's digital economy as well as revenue we get from it. But that's where we are. Thank you very much. We'll be back in a moment with the most viewed videos on our YouTube channel in the past week. Please stay with us.
The presentation of video evidence by Senator Dino Melaye from the senatorial rerun election in Kogi West at the INEC headquarters kicks off this week's most viewed in 5th place.
The petition elaborately contained 21 video CDs, and these 21 video CDs are documentary evidence of all that happened during the election.
It is followed in 4th by the fire that gutted the Owode market, destroying property worth millions of naira.
And I want to assure you that any request that comes from Mr. President.
3rd place is occupied by the declaration by Senate President Awogbenle that any presidential request will be acted upon, as he believes it will be good for Nigerians.
The Senate will act expeditiously.
The president, promising to go by the constitution he swore an oath to, falls 1 place to 2nd after being in top spot last week.
You should read the constitution, because I'm not going to make a mistake of attempting to have a 3rd term or whatever term. Besides the age, I swore by the holy book I believe in that I will go by the constitution. The Constitution said 2 terms.
And in 1st is the gas explosion that occurred in Lagos, killing 2 persons and leaving many injured.
Well, there you go. Those were the most viewed videos on our YouTube channel in the past week. And that's also where we wrap it up on the show this week. Thank you so very much for watching. But do remember, as always, the conversation doesn't end here. It continues on social media via the social media handles as well as the hashtags you're seeing right now on your screen. Thank you once again for watching. I'm Victor MATHIAS. Bye for now.